Tradition tells us that King David wrote Psalm 51 in response to this very moment in his life. And so we hear the words of the psalmist. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love. In your great compassion, blot out my offenses. Wash me through and through from my wickedness and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my offenses, and my sin is ever before you. Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are justified when you speak and right in your judgment. Indeed, I was born steeped in wickedness, a sinner from my mother's womb. Indeed, you delight in truth deep within me and would have me know wisdom deep within. Remove my sins with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be purer than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness, that the body you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my wickedness. Faith comes from what is heard. Word comes through the word of Christ. So how did we get to this situation? King David, being the very second king that the Israelites have, is really a good king. Unlike Saul, his predecessor, King David goes to God at every decision he has to make. As a child and as a boy and as a young man, every time he's faced with a difficulty, we read in the Bible that King David goes to God in prayer and in meditation, asking advice and guidance and leadership. So King David really has a deep heart and faith in God. And one of the things he's best known for is that King David, being a warrior, really established a sense of security for all the people in Israel for the very first time. He sort of made sure that the perimeters and the boundaries were finally safe, that those pesky neighbors stopped invading, and so people felt a sense of security for the very first time in their memory. So King David was very beloved, and he built a wonderful palace, and he had everything that he needed. And then something happened. He forgot that as rich and powerful and beloved as he was, that he was not free to do anything he wanted to do without consequence, that he could affect people negatively, that God was watching what he was doing too. One day he looks out from his palace and he sees Bathsheba, and he's so overwhelmed with her that he asks for her to come to his castle. Of course, you can't say no to the king. He sleeps with her and sends her home. Part of the problem is she's married. Well, about a month later, she comes back and tells David that she is pregnant, and now David has a problem because her husband Uriah has been gone to war this whole time, and it would be pretty obvious that something wasn't right. So the first thing that David does to cover his tracks is he asks for Uriah to come back from war and have a little homestay for a while. But Uriah refuses to go home because he's very passionate about solidarity with his soldiers and being with them. And so David sends a message to the other generals asking that Uriah be put in the very front lines of the worst part of the battle, and that when Uriah is surrounded and the enemies come toward it, that the soldiers retreat from him so he's left alone. And this happens, and Uriah is killed. David takes Bathsheba as his wife, and he thinks that's the end of the story. But God saw what David did, and it displeased him, and so he sent Nathan to go to David and to tell this heartbreaking story that gets right at David, and in that moment he's able to see himself for who he is. Namely, that he used his power so selfishly. He used his power not for good, but for something very selfish. So today, one of the things we can talk about is how it is that we use our power. Because while you and I do not have the power of King David, there are things we do every single day that make an effect on the world. In little ways, when we choose to love someone, to say a kind word, to offer forgiveness and acceptance to a person, that is great power. Because the opposite is to reject, to deny, to neglect a person, to refuse forgiveness and acceptance, to be cruel. That is a different kind of power. And every day, we're given that choice of how we navigate the world. Last weekend, I was with some of my girlfriends from college, and we got together, and in talking, my friend was telling me all about her 13-year-old nephew who's just a whiz at computers, and any kind of technology need she has, she will go to her 13-year-old nephew, and he will figure it out. And she's just sort of impressed and amazed and a little frightened by how good he is at computers. And at one point, she went to her sister and said, "Do you really know how good your son is with computers? I mean, he's crazy, scary good." And she says, "Yes, I know, but don't worry, he uses his power for good and not for evil." And as I was thinking this week about this sermon, I put on Facebook and I asked people to just give me examples of everyday people like you and me who did something special and extraordinary and used their power for good. And I got quite a few responses. 3 people actually pointed out the same story that had come out about a week ago. And maybe some of you know this story. Last Saturday here in North Dakota, there was a cross-country meet in which, as girls were running around the track, one of the girls collapsed as something went wrong in her leg. And she fell down in pain and was crying and upset. And other girls were running past her, but one stopped, went over, put her on her back, and walked her across the finish line. And it was very inspiring for everybody who was there as they remembered, we're all in this together in life. And yes, we can get so focused on little individual moments and days and stressors that we can almost forget that we can really do good things and we can really step out of our little anxieties and see the big picture and do something really special. Another story that came my way was of a 15-year-old boy, an Eagle Scout, I guess that was part of the story, who made and invented a device for Alzheimer's patients that put on their ankle a little band that when they started to get lost or started to wander too far, it would alert their caregiver that this was going on. There's also an 8-year-old boy named Noah who has a 6-year-old brother who's disabled. And this 8-year-old brother loves to participate in little triathlons, and he pushes his 6-year-old brother the whole way. But there were other pieces that people gave, simple things. They said, teachers, volunteers in the community, volunteers at church, people who help with worship, over and over again in little ways that we almost forget we're making a difference or we're saying something kind or being helpful. We can forget that we can have an impact on someone, that we are being watched. And one friend says very simply, I try to give encouragement, hope, and concrete plans to young people who were just like me when I was young. All of this as we think together about how we move in this world. Because we are loved, and so we are free to choose how we want to live. And because we are loved, we get to really think together about how we do want to navigate this world. So if we want to go to the next slide, I just have a few more about world hunger. And an update from the video that we just watched, it isn't 1/6, but thankfully 1 out of 9 people who are hungry, which means actually we are winning this battle against hunger slowly but surely. But we still have 1.2 billion people living in extreme poverty on less than $1.25 a day. And in the United States, more than 50 million people do not know where their next meal will come from. 46.2 are living in poverty, and many of these people have jobs as well. Next slide, please. And what I love about ELCA World Hunger is because it's everyday people like you and me who pool things together, pool ideas together, and really do unbelievable things. Last year, they raised $18.6 million. They offered relief as well as development work so people could get out of poverty. So they don't just go in and hand people some food and some simple things and leave. But they stay and try to figure out together with the community what are going to be some really good ideas to help these people over the long haul. But they also work here in the United States and in countries around the world to end hunger and poverty. And the other thing I love about this amazing organization is they don't just come into a country and compete with other good things that are going on or ignore other things that are going on. But rather, if they go into a state or a county or a country in the world and they see that people are doing really good work, ELCA World Hunger will come to them, partner with them, support them, and make them a part of their larger umbrella and network of help. So there's over 600 programs nationally and in this world that they help to support that are already existing in terms of education, health, sustainable development, microloans, food pantries, homeless shelters, and so much more. We can go to the next slide as well. So one of the things we're doing today in this challenge of World Food Sunday is asking for people to come forward during the hymn of the day and to give a donation. And our goal is to hit and hopefully break $1,000 today to go to ELCA World Hunger. And listed are all of the different ways in which ELCA Hunger is involved in this world in making a difference. It's an unbelievable organization and such a great example of how we can do little things to make the world a better place. So today I just want us to think a little bit together. When you think about your day and when you think about your week, how it is that we use our power. The power of a kind word and the power of forgiveness and acceptance. The power of the ways in which we volunteer our time, the way in which we spend our money, the way in which we take time out of our day to be with people that matter. We have a lot of power. And I want us in our freedom, knowing that we're loved as children of God, knowing that we have such grace and unconditional love given to us. I want us then to feel that freedom and also that responsibility to think together about how we do want to live in this world, to use our power for good, to raise our voices together to make this world a better place for all of us. In Jesus' name. Amen.